We know now at this point that he has still eluded capture. Still, no one knows where him, specifically Every, and his treasure has gone.
So he was only a pirate for what, like 2, maybe 3 years?
Right. So this happened. He started pirating. He started being involved in the slave trade and privateering 1692, and this happened in 1695. So he makes
He comes
one
out
of
of
the biggest
nowhere.
stores, biggest scores
That's
ever.
insane.
But he was doing other stuff before that.
Sure, yeah,
he
yeah.
was pirating
Yeah.
before he went after this big ship.
But like that's man.
If it wasn't for this, he would have been just another guy
Yeah.
out there. Like no one would have known his name. Hello and welcome to The Mysterious Pals, a show about pals, mysteries, and history. And today, in our first episode, I'm joined by my co-host, Jordan.
Hello.
And my name is Chris. And we will be examining a famous pirate, one of the most famous pirates that you never heard of, someone that had such an impact on pirates, or the idea of what a pirate is, that to this day, media still kind of focuses on this idea of what a pirate is based on the story of Captain Henry Avery. Have you ever heard of pirate treasure?
Of course.
Have you ever found any pirate treasure? Oh yeah, the Goonies. Yes, the best part of pirate treasure.
Yeah, I think
the most important part.
Sure, I think the idea is, when you're a kid, like how cool would it be to stumble across a cove filled with riches in a chest?
Yes, I go to the beach often when I was a child, and I walked around to coves looking for treasure.
Like it made me want to have a metal detector.
I would love a metal detector.
Don't have one.
I have one, but I just feel like such a weirdo walking around in the beach.
Because it's always like an 80-year-old guy.
Yeah,
in like super short shorts, like Speedos.
I wish I had that type of
confidence
in myself, because I just was like, people just be like, what is this dude doing?
What's this dude doing? He's gonna find anything.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it is. You're like, come on, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
But it seems like a really fun pastime that I wish I had the confidence to, mess with. When I took my kids to the beach, my cousins, nephews, and to the beach one year, I thought it'd be really funny to like put change in the sand and give them my metal detector and be like, go find treasure. And then I forgot where I threw all the money. So they're just walking around the beach looking for stuff. And I was like, oh, next year I got to flag it down where I put it. Because they're like, whoa, they're running around with this metal detector. So in any case, we are going to be discussing Henry Avery. And as we get through this story and we discuss his kind of famous, one of the most famous pirate acts of piracy throughout history, it become clear on why the idea of what a pirate is kind of started with Henry Avery and the people in this time.
Oh, very cool.
So Henry Avery, he was a notorious English pirate, and he operated in the 17th century. He's referred to as the most successful pirates of the golden age of piracy. So he's one of the first ones that they say, this is the pirate that all the pirates are based on.
That's saying a lot, because there's a lot of very famous pirates like Blackbeard.
Yeah, Blackbeard is the one that always comes to mind. But
to say this guy's a king of pirates is pretty impressive.
Right. So his legacy is based on he only had a short run as pirate, which is what's great and about the stories. He raided a ship called the Ganj-i Sawai, and this raid was so big and so successful for him, and the fact that he just disappeared, and it led to this romanticizing culture of what piracy is and what pirates do, and this idea.
All right.
So, from what we know, Henry Avery was born in Plymouth, England, or around Plymouth, England, sometimes between 1653 and 1659. So, it seems that historians don't even know when this guy was born.
Okay.
It is generally in this time because, as we'll find out, we have some way to do some math based on some actual records that he eventually pops up into. So, when you research him, some people say Avery, some people say Every, Every, or Avery. Some people say his name was John Avery, or John Every.
I think like the fact that this only lends into the romanization of this guy, it would seem, since not much is known about him.
Yes.
Even like his own name.
He came from nothing.
Yeah.
And basically got away with everything.
Oh, okay, that's all right.
Henry was In any case, Henry Avery was the name he used when he joined the Royal Navy. The reason why we know that around the time he was born and he was active, and the records they actually have was him. There was concrete records of him being involved in the 9 Years' War in Europe.
Okay.
In 1689.
Okay.
Which was official records of from the British Navy. That's the only reason they know. They can kind of figure out his age then, kind of figure out when he was born around and what age he would have entered and things like that. So if you watched or listened to our first episode, episode 0 actually, of why and when and how and why the purpose of this show in general, you'll know that Jordan has a background in history. So a lot of the historical information that we discuss, I will reference back to him because of his background in education and history. And so at this point, I want to know, Jordan, what do you know was going on in Europe at this time in this end of the 1600s, the 17th century, 18th century?
Colonialism is very big during this time. You have all these European powers, such as like France, England, Portugal, and Spain, are setting sail, going to these other territories, other countries, and setting up colonies. And in these colonies, they are getting all these new resources that are in turn providing them with an extreme amount of wealth. And there's also slave trade is very big right now. So these places, they're going to Africa, getting slaves, taking them to what is now the United States, South America, the Bahamas, and they're using them for their own means as far as
free labor.
Free labor, yeah. And in these places, you get like especially in the United States, you have cotton, tobacco, things that they couldn't really get in Europe. And by bringing them back, all these people are making tons of money off of this stuff, tons. And then you have places like in the Far East, such as India, where spices and tea they're gathering and bringing back to Europe, which again, they can sell for much more money. And these big companies and like people are becoming extremely wealthy, all this stuff, such as like the East India Trading Company.
Which we'll talk about later.
Okay.
A big part of the story.
And also during this time, you have the 9 Years' War, which is basically all the European powers against France. France tried to... They crossed the Rhineland in Germany, modern-day Germany, which is a big part of the Holy Roman Empire. And that, in order to like gain a little bit more land, resources. So because of that, basically everyone goes against France and starts a war.
It's called the Grand Alliance, right?
Yeah, the Grand Alliance, yeah. So 9 years this goes on for. So I'm guessing around this time, they're in the thick of it right now.
Yep. Okay. It sounds like, because they entered the 9 Years' War in 1689, England did. So this is whenever...
1690s?
Yeah, this is whenever he was part of it.
Okay.
Or he got involved in the he enlisted in the Navy.
Sure. So at this point, everyone's just basically against France.
Okay.
Okay.
So during this time, the records suggest that he co-signed his pay to his family in Devon. So there's records that he had a family in Devon, wife, kids, maybe, or his parents, or something. Someone was back in England that he was sending his pay to his naval pay to.
Okay.
He was discharged from the Navy in 1691, and he became involved involved in the Atlantic slave trade at this time.
Okay.
Getting privateering, that type of thing, which we'll go over in a minute. He was employed by the royal governor of Bermuda, as you were talking about slave trade and what was going on in the other colonies, to transport Africans from West Africa to the Americas during this period. So 1693, Avery joined a venture to raid French trade in Spanish West Indies, set up by a British businessman and the King of Spain. I'm sorry. So King of Spain, British businessmen that were trying to get together to make money off of raiding and messing with French trade.
Okay.
So this goes into what privateering is, and what can you tell me about privateering?
Basically, I mean, short end of it, privateering is a almost legal piracy. So say, for example, in this case, England, they're at war with France. So they get some merchants and they legally are allowed to go and be legal pirates almost. So say they come across a French vessel, they're allowed to, by law of the British Empire, to board that, steal what they can, loot what they can for the British Crown. So it's almost a legal act of piracy.
Okay.
That's backed by a government.
So While France might go after him, England's not going to arrest him.
Yeah, they're not going to be arrested. They're not going to be hung because, at this time, piracy's, I wouldn't say rampant, but if you're a pirate, you're gonna die.
They call it the golden age of piracy.
Yeah, you're gonna be hung. So like this is a legalization of piracy, basically.
During this time, for that venture, because at this time the Navy, he discharged from the Navy. What are those naval men going to do during a time of war and things like that? There's if you're transporting stuff, as we talked about being transported around, he's going to be involved in because people are all fighting against each other. Pirates are involved. Like it's going to be just kind of what's going on in the Navy at this point, or around the Atlantic Ocean and
I imagine the world. Pirates are probably taking advantage of this war as well too, right?
It seems like
that'd be an opportune time for the pirates to come in and like, oh, this ship's wrecked over here. Let's go see what we can grab from it.
It seems like there's a lot of people turning to piracy because, as we'll find out, that there's a lot of people that were in the Navy and then all of a sudden the Navy didn't need people, so they were discharged. They got people they needed to make money somehow. So he joined this venture, which was again raiding French trade in the Spanish West Indies. He took the position as the first mate of the Charles, a ship called the Charles.
Is that after the King of Spain? Probably.
I'd imagine.
Yeah. I think he's a king around this time. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, my background's on history. But the thing was that this venture wasn't very successful, and it led to months of these people on these boats doing nothing because there wasn't a lot of the French ships weren't showing up, or there weren't enough of them to make it actually to make money. It was kind of a failed venture.
Sure.
Be like starting a business and business not successful. So it was kind of the thing where they were all sitting around. And they were like, for months and months and months, they were like, well, when are we getting paid? How are we going to get paid? Are we even going to get paid? Or are we just going to get dumped off somewhere? What happens whenever the King of Spain wants his stuff back, his ships back? So in 1694, mutiny on the Charles II, which is another boat involved in this venture, led Avery to be elected captain of the ship. So in 1694, there was a mutiny on the Charles II, which is, again, not all of the ships. There was a mutiny on all of them. It was just this one ship and a few others. He became the captain. They renamed the ship the Fancy, which was a 46 gun vessel with around, at the time, he had 94 men. Okay. Again, the stories were like there's lots of ships involved, and also other ships in that fleet, this part of the venture, didn't like this idea, especially ones that were loyal to the Spanish crowd. They didn't like it, so they came after him, and eventually, what happened was the story was he and his ship just escaped. They got away. There was a fight. Fancy. Yes, it's called the Fancy. He renamed it the Fancy.
Very British.
If I was gonna have a boat, it'd be called the Fancy as well. Fancy too. The men renamed the ship Fancy, 46 gun vessel, 94 men. They headed for Cape Verde, which I believe is on the African coast. They were raiding ships for supplies and new crew. The ones of note were 2 Dutch ships that they raided and took all of their stuff, all their cargo, and some of their men. Apparently, the story also goes around that Avery was actually a really, not saying a nice pirate, but he took your stuff, but he was like, hey, you can either join me or just go, and I won't kill you.
That's nice.
Whether that's true or not, yeah. Nice pirates are always the best pirates. So what he also did during this time was they took his ship, the Fancy that they stole, technically, and they cut away parts of the structure of the ship to make it faster. They wanted to make it a really fast ship so they can, again, catch, ships that are heavily weighed down with treasure.
Yeah, and outrun ships too, I'd imagine.
Yeah, get away. That's a good point. So throughout 1694 and 1695, Avery and his crew raided ships and gathered supplies and men. So they were raiding different ships. There actually was stories about how he told and sent information, or he sent communications back to England and said, I won't raid British trade ships or ships from Britain, and then so that he wouldn't be chased by his country. But the other stories are that he definitely just said that so they wouldn't go after him. And again, like, you think about this, it's not like he's just like sending an email and being like, I'm not going to mess with you. This is like, it probably took months for them to actually get that information.
Sure, yeah.
And who talked to him and then survived? Like, obviously he was letting people just, hey, we're going to take your stuff, let you go on your way.
Yeah.
So again, he was making his way to the Indian Ocean during this time, stopping off along the coast of Madagascar and parts of Africa to resupply and hide out, spend probably the loot that they had, sell it, because during I guess around this area, especially areas like Madagascar, Africa, and just different places where trade was definitely moving to I guess the East Indies
Yeah.
and to Europe. There was a lot of little towns and kind of places popping up that him and his men could spend their money at, resupply, take off again.
Safe havens for them.
Yes.
Okay.
So at this time, by this point in the story, his crew was around 150 men, give or take. 1695, Every set his sights, and there were stories of this. Every year there's this pilgrimage for the Grand Mughal Emperor and the Mughal Empire, and his fleet was making their annual pilgrimage to Mecca, and the emperor's fleet, was loaded with treasure and people, and it was a fleet of 25 ships. So, who was the Mughal Empire? Mughal Empire of India, powerful, influential dynasty that ruled over vast parts of Indian subcontinent for many centuries. So, in this time, Europe and this Mughal Empire, or this part of the world, with all the trade going on, the title or the name of a company called the East India Trading Company comes up a lot. Can you tell me anything about the East India Trading Company?
So the East India Trading Company, they started around the 1600s. By this time, they wouldn't have reached their height, but at their height, they ended up being one of the biggest corporations ever. They monopolized trade for the most part in the Indian Ocean with India. I think at one point their army was bigger than the actual British Empire. They were a British Rand company, obviously, but so in this time, and for the next 200 years, they had a big presence in India. They would with trade, mainly in spices, fibers, and tea. And I don't know.
So there was just a company that was huge in the trade.
Yes. Yeah. They became a monopoly almost. They ended up basically ruling that whole entire region as far as like trade was concerned.
I think it's crazy that you hear stories about this group, the East India Trading Company, and that they had their own army and they were involved in wars.
Yeah,
which was amazing. And
they were one of the most successful businesses ever.
When people talk about the corporations of today, you look back at like that type of corporation that like had its own army.
Yeah,
it was more powerful than most nations at the time. So there was this huge convoy of ships, this whole fleet of 25 ships making this annual pilgrimage, and they were loaded with the Aurangzeb emperor's treasure. And it was said that he was making £3 million a year easily, based on his income from however emperors make money.
Okay.
So you figure he was a pretty wealthy guy, especially when you imagine that he was involved with I'm sure he was getting, his kingdom was getting money from the East India Trading Company, and all this stuff was going on.
Scratch my back, I scratch yours, kind of thing.
So Avery knew about these ships. There's stories going around these ships, and he knew where they were going to be and when. So he was able to get together 5 other pirate captains, 5 other pirate ships. And he was elected admiral of this pirate fleet, which is crazy that you see pirates in today's media and they're like really cutthroat and they're all like out for themselves and just want to, but being that these guys were all probably ex-Navy or some way involved with the standard kind of idea of what leadership is, and at its time, a captain on a ship, these 5 pirate ships banded together, obviously to make a ton of money.
Yeah.
And they elected a leader and things like that. So they met at the edge of the Red Sea, specifically, it says the Gulf of Aden, which is right off the coast of Somalia, to modern day Somalia, and they were getting ready to catch this fleet basically in the middle of the night or moving past. And all these 25 ships were not military ships. They were all these pilgrims returning home. Some of them were military because the emperor and his money, his treasure being transported, and then also military to protect the pilgrims. But it was 25 ships that were all different things. You wonder how like they figure out what ship to attack. Like obviously maybe the biggest one, but every set his sight on a ship, called the Ganj-i Sawai, which was what was known to be the loaded with treasure. And some people say that it was translated to gun sway. Some people also, some research I did said that it was translated to the treasure ship, or loaded with treasure. So I kind of it's really strange because there was some people say one thing, the gun sway. Some people exceeding treasure was the other other translation. So it's like, why would you name your ship that? If it was translates to exceeding treasure, why would you name it that? It's like obviously okay.
Like, yeah, attack us.
Yeah. So they set their sight on this ship, Ganj-i Sawai, and its escort ship, the Fatih Muhammad, was involved in this battle as well. So the Ganj-i Sawai is a large ship, like 80-gun ship, so double the amount of guns than just the Fancy at the time. Is 46-gun ship. So they caught up with the pirate fleet, chased the Mughal fleet. They first caught up with the first engaged with the Fatih Muhammad. The Dolphin, one of the the ships that were with the 5 pirate ships were the Amity, the Portsmouth Adventure, the Dolphin, the Pearl, and Susanna. Those are the 5 pirate ships that were involved in this, plus the Fancy. So they all got together. They all were chasing this fleet, which was obviously running away. The Dolphin, which was too slow, so they burned it. They just got the other guys, put them on their ship, and they burned their ship down. I don't know why they would do that. Maybe it was attacked. I'm not sure. In the research, I didn't find out exactly why they burned it. It just said they burned it.
Okay.
The Amity caught the Fatih Muhammad first, but their captain, Thomas II, who comes up in history and piracy, was killed. Well, not as popular and big as other pirates. Thomas II does a name that comes up in piracy. Fancy caught up with Fatih Muhammad and the other ships. They seized 50,000 pounds of gold and silver just from that one small ship.
Jeez.
And which would have been enough.
Yeah, that alone would have been enough.
Plenty for these guys to take off and disappear and be wealthy. But they wanted to, they wanted to get the big gun. So the big one, which was the Ganj-i Sawai. At this point, the Amity's gone. So there was 3 remaining pirate ships. They all went after the Ganj-i Sawai, which was captained by Captain Muhammad Abraham. He had 400. Not only did he have 80 guns on board, 80 cannons, he had 400 musket-armed guards, as well as 600 other passengers, other pilgrims. Not necessarily, they weren't military. Okay. They were just people. So the battle comes down to some very specific luck on the top part of Captain Avery. There was some really good research done by historians Douglas Burgess, Joel Baer, and Peter Earle, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering their names. And a lot of the information here about the battle comes from these guys and their research. When you're comparing the 2 ships, the Fancy had 46 guns with 100, some estimates 150 men in total. The Ganj-i Sawai had 80 guns, 400 armed musket men. So it seems like in this kind of battle, there was no chance of Avery to be successful. Knowing these numbers, what do you think? How could they ever possibly cover?
I mean, like they're outgunned.
Outnumbered, outgunned.
Yeah.
They have most people would say there's no way, especially at this time in history.
Yeah.
There's not the technology that we have now.
Sure. I would imagine they would have speed on their side.
Right. They are a fast ship.
Sure. But
ship, the Ganj-i Sawai, is loaded down with, some estimates were 600,000 tons, or 600,000 tons was the weight of the ship.
Okay.
But then there's also people that say that was mistranslation, that it was 600,000 pounds of treasure.
Okay.
So yeah. I don't know who to believe. But in any case, there's a lot of treasure in there. So what happened was, the Ganj-i Sawai, the Fancy pulls up by themselves. The other 2 ships haven't engaged. It's just the Fancy, 150 men. They pull up and they fire a shot, and it takes down the enemy's main mast, so the Ganj-i Sawai's main mast.
Oh, geez.
So they're dead in the water. They're not able to move.
Yeah.
Very lucky shot.
Holy cow.
Right. So then at that point, we're like, well, we have the Ganj-i Sawai's like, well, we have 400. You have 400 musket men shooting down these 150 pirates, which I'm sure people are getting knocked off every couple couple minutes. How are they going to board this treasure ship? And most people would just take the 50,000 pounds of treasure they already got and get the hell out of there. So battle's raging. Their soldiers are firing, using muskets to fire on the pirates that are trying to get aboard the Ganj-i sawai to take it over. At that point in time, there's an explosion below deck. One of their cannons explodes. Not only does this kill a lot of people.
This is on the Ganj-i sawai.
Ganj-i sawai.
Okay.
Cannon explodes, kills a lot of people. Also, demoralizes a lot of their crew because the people, all of a sudden, chaos breaks out.
Yeah.
Chaos breaks out. Some soldiers are going down below to help. Some are still trying to fight off the pirates.
Put out fire.
There's a huge fire happened. So at this point, the pirates take advantage of the chaos. Joel Bayer explains how the Fancy raided the ship at this point because of the chaos, and it seems that like this miracle, this pirate god miracle, again, in two specific cases that led to the Fancy being able to successfully take over the ship was two, not mistakes, but like
a lucky shot
and an explosion.
Yeah,
two very specific things. It wasn't even like they messed up. They just, two very specific things happened that led to them being boarded. During this time, the captain of the Ganj-i sawai, Muhammad Abraham, was unable to get control of the troops because of the chaos. There's so much chaos going on. Every ship was, at this point, was still the only ship engaging with the ship, with the Ganj-i sawai. So as this all happened, all this chaos taking forth, finally, one of the other pirate ships joins the fight. So remember, the Pearl joined the fight.
Okay, the Dolphin was the one that was set on fire?
Dolphin was destroyed.
Okay.
Amity lost its captain and was destroyed in the battle with the Fatih Muhammad. This leaves the Fancy, the Portsmouth Adventure, and the Pearl. So the Pearl engages, but the Portsmouth Adventure, which I don't know why they didn't engage. So I wonder if they even got treasure at that point. So if they didn't engage, they're not really doing anything. I don't know if they eventually do or what happens. But at that, I mean, why? Also, they're probably being smart. Like, why would we engage with this insane thing going on right now? It's like as the chaos is still ensuing, how are you going to know? Like, oh, someone texts you and says, "Hey, come over, work." It's not happening. A lot of the research by Indian historians goes back to the captain of the Ganj-i sawai. His leadership, they're critical of his leadership that led to this defeat. Because you figure 400 men versus 100, we'll say 150 at the most.
Sure.
Smaller ship, less guns. Yes, two big things happened that kind of led to this. But how can you say it was one person that did this? I don't know. So Kafi Khan, Muhammad Hasim Kafi Khan, again, I'm sorry for mispronunciations, a contemporary Indian historian who was in Surat at the time, wrote that Avery's men boarded the ship. Ganj-i sawai captain ran below deck, where he armed slave girls and sent them to fight the pirates. So he kind of ran away. Now, this is, again, some people say this is true, and some like this is a historian.
Yeah.
He obviously he was doing this report after these events. So Kafi Khan account of the battle appeared in this multi-volume work, The History of India, as told by its own historians, places blame squarely on Captain Abraham and the failure in writing. This is what Muhammad Abraham said in this book.
Is he saying that it wasn't the fact that they got a lucky shot or that cannon blew up? It was the fact, like, they weren't actually good pirates, but it was the fact that, like, it was the captain's fault. Like, why?
That seems that they're kind of saying, well, like, and this time, this is
blame, I guess
Indian historian at this time writing this report, writing this kind of history down, and it seems he's saying that there's no way that these guys could overcome our soldiers, things like that. It was because
an incompetent captain,
one guy screwed everything up.
Okay.
Not also, it seems like it was a lot of different things. Maybe it was this one guy. This History of India, told by its own historians, book, a multi-volume work by Kafi Khan, he quotes Captain Abraham saying, "Christians are not bold in the use of sword, and there were so many weapons on board the royal vessel that if the captain had made any resistance, they must have been defeated. In any case, after several hours of stubborn but leaderless resistance, the ship was surrendered." So it's saying that Kafi Khan says this talking about Muhammad Abraham. He does have Captain Abraham is also quoted in his report to, I guess, his report about the fight. So obviously he survived and returned to India.
Yeah.
He said many enemy were sent to hell, was his exact words that he gave in the reports. Avery's outnumbered crew may have suffered anywhere from several to over 100 casualties, although these figures are uncertain. So it's not really certain even how many people were lost. Again, I'm not sure if the Portsmouth Adventure ever actually engaged or if they just took off. In any case, the battle, this whole thing, resulted in an extraordinary amount of wealth for the pirates. So this group of pirates. Again, we don't know how many actually survived. His crew, it may have been like 50 men may have run off with all this money, all this treasure.
Sorry, how much money was on this?
So
Sawai?
Estimates suggest that a loot amassed by Avery and his crew from the Ganj-i Sawai just alone was 600,000 pounds, which in today's money would be
like tens of millions of dollars.
Tens of millions of dollars. It included gold bars, silver bars, precious stone, jewels, silks, and other valuable commodities. Now, it's funny whenever people say, when we say treasure, we think of cash, money, gold, jewels. But back then, I mean, treasure was sugar, spices, silk. These type of things were treasure because as you said, during this time, the colonialism and trade, you could sell that stuff pretty
for a lot of money
in other countries.
Yeah.
So it's not like he just got it like this much money in cash. It wasn't just gold. Like there was gold, there was silver, there was jewels, silks, precious gemstones, and other commodities.
Okay. Yeah, usually you just think of like, gold coins.
Yeah.
Like when you think of like
just like a treasure chest.
Yeah.
600,000 pounds, which is tens of millions of dollars of stuff.
Jeez.
And would you rather have you think about today's world where the way our society is with would you rather have 60 barrels of oil? Would you rather have gold? Like what is the value of those things?
And I think at least with like the like you said, there might be some silk or like spices and stuff like that you can sell easily. I would imagine back then without people asking questions like, "Oh, how'd you come across this?" Whereas like if there was
no paper trails back then.
Right, yeah. Or if you had like a Mughal coin, like how'd you get this?
Right.
Like
it's stamped with the Mughal Empire.
Yeah. Like how'd you come across this?
We'll go into like they found coins from this empire at the time, and like going back, the Mughal Empire collapsed around the 19th century, so they were still around for a while.
Okay.
So the outcome of this whole thing, this raid, it's not really known about where they went, although we will see they pop back up here and there. Some were captured because maybe they were in different parts of the world. How do you even prove that they were part of that crew? How do you prove that, right? Unless you get an eyewitness that I saw that guy, but
there's no photographs or anything like that.
And also, they take off, and they take off and disappear. How long does like the empire, the emperor, Britain, like all these different countries find out what's going on?
Yeah, information is traveling probably pretty
very slow. I mean, it's how long does it take to sail from India to Britain? Because it's not like they're just emailing. So Avery disappears. Eventually, some of his crew is caught. We'll get into that. But this incident caused outrage and panic among European powers, trading companies, and Mughal Empire. Mughal Empire. The Emperor Aurangzeb, he was obviously extremely upset because you would think that this isn't just his treasure ship. Like this is not just like a trading ship. This is his treasure coming back from this trip.
It's like it's a holy thing. Yeah. Like that's a big slap in the face.
It's not even that it's just regular treasure.
Right. Yeah, you're not only taking my money, but you're like attacking my people, like doing a religious thing. That's a religious act.
Attacking like
it's
God.
kind of like you don't like do that.
Right. This is a very important treasure, sacred treasure. So he was obviously like, you need to fix this. He went to the European powers and the East India Trading Company and things like that. And why do you think why do you think the European powers and East India Trading Company, like these people they don't want to anger this emperor or the empire in general?
Right. I think totally 100% would be economic reasons. Like they have economic interests there, especially Britain with the East India Trading Company. Like they don't want, all their economic interests there is like as far as like trade and like trading of spices, teas, and stuff like that, and fabrics. Like if you piss this guy off, this emperor off, they're going to give you the boot out of your country. And that was such a big thing for Britain to have that area. Like that was their area alone. Like Dutch to Spain, the Portuguese, the French, they weren't trading in that area. Like singularly, it was the British Empire who were trading there. So if you piss this guy off, he can kick you out and give those rights to your enemies, like the French.
So yeah, I think
you're losing a lot of money. You're losing tons of money.
Even back all this time ago, trade is such a big thing in society during this time as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we do the same thing today in society. In the world, we see that in world politics.
Yeah.
We don't care about angering the Middle East countries, but
Right.
we're not going to anger China or our big trading partners because that's how we make money. It's how they make money.
Yeah.
So it's important for that try to trade.
And also, back then, like I said earlier, the colonialism, it's a big competition. Like all these countries are competing with one another, get more resources.
Still today.
Yeah, get bigger footholds in some of these other places. So if they got kicked out, East India Trade Company, that's Britain's whole foothold in that area would be totally gone to go to one of their enemies.
Yeah, I think it's just super interesting how society our trade has always been a huge thing.
You'd like to think, Great Britain would be the British Empire, sorry, that shouldn't have happened. You're sorry your people were murdered and possibly raped and on the way to pilgrimage. But realistically, they're just
we don't want to lose this business.
Yeah.
We don't want France.
Yeah, you're right.
So again, these crimes were considered unforgivable for the Muslim pilgrimage in India, and the emperor's treasure being stolen, sacred treasure. So the company, East India Trading Company, the other world powers at this time, they cooperated with the authorities from the Mughal Empire. They were doing what they could. They were involved and wanted to catch this stolen loot. Again, not to anger the emperor and get kicked out. There's stories about during this time, Mughal Empire, the emperor went and closed, Mughal Empire, sorry. Mughal Empire went and personally closed East India factories and arrested Englishmen throughout the country because they were so angry. It's almost like this kind of idea of we're going to arrest these guys to show that we are fighting back, or we're kind of fighting.
I would imagine push Britain to do something about it.
Right.
By doing that.
Yeah, we're going to start hurting your economy. So in response to all this kind of pressure, the British Crown issued a royal proclamation offering a very big reward for Avery's capture and also the return of the treasure. It threatened severe punishment for anybody who provided aid or shelter to these pirates or these men. £500 bounty was put on his head, and it led to the idea of what we know as a global manhunt. They led to one of the first big international manhunts.
All right.
And his crew, they say about 130 men with all the people involved, all the crew from his ships involved. Because it wasn't just his fancy that took off with treasure.
Yeah.
He had the other ships involved. And again, there wasn't real records of I didn't find records of what happened to the Portsmouth adventure that they engaged.
Yeah, I wonder how they divvied that all up.
So we know now at this point that he has still eluded capture. Still, no one knows where him, specifically Avery, and his treasure has gone.
So he was only a pirate for 2, maybe 3 years?
Right. So this happened. He started pirating. He started being involved in the slave trade and privateering 1692, and this happened in 1695. So he makes
comes
one
out
of the
nowhere.
biggest scores, biggest scores ever.
Insane.
But he was doing other stuff before that. He was he was pirating before he went after this big ship.
But that's man.
If it wasn't for this, he would have been just another guy out there. No one would have known his name. There were pirates that were captured from his crew. They say some in England, some other places in the world. I wonder if it was just they captured these guys that were said to be pirates. It's kind of like the witch trials, were they just saying this guy was on Avery's team or group? Let's and then they were just look, Emperor Aurangzeb, we found this guy. We're gonna murder him. Okay. We're gonna put him to death. Try him, put him to death because he was involved in that. I wonder if were these acts, these kind of in England it was said 24 men were caught, 6 convicted, and 5 put to death for the crimes. Were they just doing this to put on a show for the Mughals?
I mean, yeah. It's definitely possible for sure. Yeah, it showed good faith.
Hey, this
we're taking care of it. Please don't.
And we said today in modern society, this person got murdered. We're gonna get this guy because he was walking down the street at the same time.
I mean, but it also get like I'm trying to think if torching was a thing during this specific time, but like these guys could have been like you said, not even part of his crew, but they could have been other pirates just grabbed off the street. Eventually, if you're tortured enough, you're gonna say what you want them to hear. Yeah,
just to stop.
Right.
Yeah. So at this point, we get into like the mystery, the kind of idea of where is Henry. There is no concrete information about his later life after this time. He disappears. Obviously, back in this time, this creates this huge kind of firestorm of stories of this mythical pirate lord that disappeared, mythical pirate captain, this larger than life guy disappears.
Yeah, the one that got away.
And he's rich somewhere. And there's depict him as a cunning and loose figure, capturing and enjoying this, this kind of spoils of piracy. We see at this time also this rise of like people wanting to be pirates. Again, that's why they call him the king of pirates, because they see people hearing all these stories about Avery. This guy made a bunch of money, got away, and it looked so easy, and he did it so quickly.
Right.
Now all of a sudden, everybody wants to be a pirate.
Yeah, because I think this is...
It's kind of like the YouTube thing. Everyone wants to make a YouTube video now, a YouTube channel.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So is this 69? Is this the starting point of the golden age of piracy? I would imagine, because that's like he probably.
I'd imagine it's
off.
around what they say is, because I mean there was piracy going on.
Yeah.
This time, so this is when it was probably towards the beginning of it being a big thing. Because what did it go into the 1700s at some point? Like when can you consider that golden age? I'm not really sure.
I think like right around the 1700s. So I would imagine he inspired a bunch of people to be like, yeah, why am I going to be in the Navy, or like?
I'd imagine if the story got around as much as they say it has, as big as it was in the world with all these people looking for him, I'd imagine it not only just people in England, but different parts, Dutch and French, all wanted to be going to piracy, which was what led to, probably led to what we know today as, the modern culture of pirates and movies, portrayals and movies and stories and stuff.
That makes sense.
So, common theories. Where did he go? The show's all about trying to answer these questions. We're obviously not going to answer them because we're just two guys talking. But
sitting in a basement.
Yeah. What is it? We're trying to, in this show, we always want to try to look at a question of the mystery, and kind of give our own feedback on it.
So wait, it's not even. So he just disappears. It isn't even known. It's not known if he was ever really caught.
There's a lot of theories about it.
Okay.
People don't even know. It's crazy. Some of these things are just crazy. Like,
because most pirates in this time, they're caught, captured, and killed.
Right. Or
just die. Like, while
they're pirates, but they don't actually make any money off of it.
Yeah.
They just die.
He did this in
poor
3 years. That's insane.
There were stories about how he lost all his money, and we'll go into some of those. Like, he lost all his money and died poor. He went back to England and hid with a different name, and because I mean, obviously, who's going to know you at that point? Where they can't take a picture of you.
That's what always blows my mind about how, like you're saying, how are some of these pirates caught? Like, there's no photography, nothing like that. There's like a crude drawing that they'll put on like a wanted poster kind of thing, but that could be anybody. So it always blows my mind that, like, back then, how are these people caught? How are pirates caught in the first place?
Yeah, because you just be like, hey, there's Avery right there.
Yeah,
and then he's caught.
Yeah,
and someone just writes it down, and that's what it comes record.
You can't prove that you're not, because you don't have like ID, or there's no like fingerprinting or anything like back then. So it's
just like
it's weird
having your family identify you. And at that point, you just identify as like, oh, that's him, and it's like the guy from the street.
It just seemed easy to disappear, but apparently for like a lot of these like pirates back then, they couldn't just disappear. They were caught. Most of them.
Yeah. How could you prove? We talk about that. Well, future we could talk about like Crusades and Crusaders. Like, they go to the same thing. Like, how do they know if you're a Crusader or not, or if you're a part of that group? Kind of this idea of like the witch hunt, the witch trials.
Sure, yeah.
Witch trials. So kind of like there is no Facebook that says this is who you are. There's no DMV kind of like there's no national or state level or national kind of identification system,
right,
to say you are who you are. Other than, I mean, I'm sure there were records back then.
Yeah,
if we don't even know when he's born, how do they know what he looks like and who he is and where he's at?
Sure, yeah.
There is research. We're going to go into the common theories of where he went. So there's a research by Ursula Sims Williams on a blog. This author goes into in 2013, talks into his name in the 18th and 19th century. Britain was like kind of the poster child or the symbol of adventure in life and piracy in life. It's like the adventure of getting it rich and adventures on the high seas and things like that, kind of like thing we know in modern culture and media. There's fictional and semi-biographical accounts of his life that were published. Ballad of Long Ben and the King of Pirates by Daniel Defoe, which was one example. Captain John Avery, written by the pseudo-anonymous Adrian van Broek and published in 1709, which was another example. Said that Captain Avery received not only the Ganj-i Sawai treasure, but the Emperor Aurangzeb's granddaughter, and happened to be on board, and that they married and sailed to Madagascar, where they lived and established like this pirate mecca. This pirate, he became like a
utopia.
It's a pirate utopia.
Okay.
Him and the granddaughter.
Dude's granddaughter. Wow.
Now
that's bold.
There's no record of her being on that ship though. Okay. So who knows? There's a website called The Way of Pirates. It goes into Avery disbanded said that after this he disbanded the fleet, and many of the pirates even on his flagship decided to retire. So they all retired, a lot of them. With the fancy and leftovers original crew, Henry sailed to the Caribbean. And there are some things, kind of there's a lot of there's some things that say this did happen, but again, New Providence in the Caribbean, he bribed the governor for protection, £7,000. He then tried to buy pardon from Governor William Beeston, but was not successful. That bounty for his head was well known. Eventually, news, I guess, got to the other English colonies and around the world, and so it seems like he was offering more money to bribe people, but I guess because of the heat that's on him and stuff, if they find out that the governor has found out that he'd be harboring this fugitive, then he's dead.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the Caribbean, the Bahamas, that's kind of like also kind of like Madagascar, it's kind of like a safe haven for some of these pirates. But like you're saying though, that there's that much heat on them, and that many people looking for them, that much pressure to find them. Yeah, they stay so long.
Right, and again, there's no specific record to show this. So there's also stories that after this he changed his name to Benjamin Bridgman, and the rest of his crew, and they got together and they sailed to Ireland. Whether that's true, I don't know where you'd even figure that out. I guess through research and people kind of pieced together, maybe that could have been him, this person, Benjamin Bridgman. He remained a subject of general conversation throughout Europe up through the 18th century. There was a lot of ridiculous stories that he married the daughter of the emperor and founded a new monarchy. But a lot of the stories, a lot of people, a lot of historians think that he just retired and died in London. Okay. He kind of hid out the streets of London, lost all his money somehow. There's stories about bad investments, and he just kind of just faded away.
Jeez.
Again, if he's in London, how would he not be found out? So,
like we were saying earlier, how does anyone even know who he is?
Right. I guess true. Like, if you're not in your hometown, and you're just hanging out in London, how do they
a different name? And,
cut your hair.
Yeah.
So there's this website called the Cornish Bird Blog. Says that he, on his way home to Devon, he was going to go there for safety because he thought that he'd be safe there, I guess. He made a stop on the Lizard Coast, and there's the Cornish Archive, Crenton Kernow, in Redruth, which I guess is in Cornwall, that holds in documents to say that his treasures are on the Lizard Coast. And not only that, they actually go into what's in his treasures and what was in the boxes that he buried. It was this manuscript and this information was translated many times, dictated different languages. It was I guess it's partially in French. Its only initials identify it as WK. So that's to be someone that had direct knowledge with what was going on with Avery and his team and this treasure.
There was a pirate. What was that one pirate? William Kidd.
I think. I think he was. I don't know if he was around the same time, but maybe. I mean, this is so.
So wait, this place has this manuscript,
right? Okay. But it's the initials on the translated and dictated manuscript. It must have been copied a couple times. It was in French. Okay. WK was the one who translate it from French to English, I guess.
Okay.
So what it says specifically, on his return from India, this is a direct quote from the manuscript. Avery the pirate, either landed or was shipwrecked near the Lizard Coast, where he buried 3 chests or boxes full of treasure in the sands of the seashore. This document claims that the chests were buried beside Tres Pierres Griches, which I didn't take French, and I'm sorry if I butchered that. 3 gray rocks is what it translates to.
Okay.
So however you say that in French, and I'm sorry to anybody who is listening that may speak French, and I'm sorry. I took Spanish in high school. I took 4 years of Spanish. I only passed one of them. Second language is not my thing. I really wish it was. It goes on to say that it is near where the corner of High Promontory juts out into the sea. He said the spring tides now come over the place. That it also has a list of what's in the chest. That it goes on to say that the chests contain. The first chest is made of wood. It's 2 feet long, 1 foot wide, which is not that big. In this chest were precious stones and bracelets, large rubies, sapphires, emeralds, topazes, and diamonds. The second chest, almost the same size as the first, made of wood, had 120 ingots of gold, 40 thick flat pieces of gold in large or round tobacco box with various characters of some on them, which I'm not sure what that means. 25 bars of gold, some of which were 4 to 5 inches long. Third chest had 300 pieces of 8, besides bullion, not weighed but crammed in the pieces of brocades, I'm not sure what that. I guess it's so. I think bullion, or I'm sorry, 300 pieces, which I think is some kind of way of kind of nomenclature for money.
Okay. Yeah.
So those are the 3 chests, but they don't. There's no way to know if this is actually true, if it's actually buried in Cornwall. And you'd expect if someone found this, they would instantly go look for this place and still be looking for this place until they found it, because it's sounds like too perfect.
Yeah.
Especially with all this time has passed.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
It says he buried it in the Lizard Coast, then returned to Devon, which if you return, then why would you go back and get it if your ship did wreck? Okay. There's a well-known British author and pirate biographer Charles Johnson. His 1724 book, A General History of Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates.
He is like a biographical thing on a lot of these pirates, doesn't he? Is that what this book?
I think so. They say that this author was a pirate, and so he wrote this book, and because he knew these guys.
Okay.
But no one really knows if that's true. It says some people say that he's just Charles Johnson is a pen name for a London publisher, publisher. Like he just wrote this to sell it, to try to go find the pirate treasures. Here's where they're located. Here's the stories of these amazing stories of these guys. He claims that it's from pirates living this time. So he suggested that after attempting to sell diamonds, Avery died in poverty in Devon after being cheated out of his wealth by Bristol merchants. So it seems that this kind of story is kind of the one that a lot of people go to. Is like, oh, he actually just died poor because he got screwed out of a lot of business dealings with his treasure. People tried to get him to invest it in their companies or these different ventures, and then they were all bad and basically were just swindling him out of his cash.
Man, what a way to go. After all that, getting all that money, just die.
You would think
poor.
Like if you did it so well the first time, you'd be like, well, I got to get back. I'm poor. I'm going to get back in the saddle and do it again. But maybe there was such heat on him, he couldn't do that.
Yeah, he's too hot.
It does. Again, this is kind of, no one really knows if this is true. There's no proof of this. Although people looking at this, historians that looked at this writings by Charles Johnson say that if it's actually true and he was in this area and he was poor, he would have been found out. He would have been caught. I don't know if that's true, but many people think that it's unlikely that this happened because he would have been caught because there's money, because other people would have known him. Yeah. These merchants, once they kind of took all of his money, they would have then went and turned him in to get more money.
More money, yeah.
There's other theories that he just kind of changed his name, settled in Devon, kind of lived a normal for the time life, not really being spending money crazy because to draw attention to himself. He was smart about it maybe, and then he just died peacefully. And some say there's records that saying that he died in 1714. Again, who knows?
If that was the case, then if he didn't spend all that money, where's the rest of this treasure?
Right. again, but he did have. There's records of him having children and family back in Devon.
Oh, right.
There is a source of information called the history. This source of information comes from the history of and lives of all the most notorious pirates and their crews, which was published in London in 1732. Although it's considered that this book, this kind of this information, this source was really unreliable because it was.
This is the Charles Johnson one.
No, this is by I think Edwin Midwinter in 1732. It was published in London. And a lot of people think that that's just this publisher again took that Charles Johnson book and republished it with some changes.
Okay.
In October 1781, John Knill, the collector of customs at St. Ives of Cornwall, held a meeting with a supposed descendant of Avery who stated that his father had told him that Captain Avery, after wandering about in great poverty and distress, had died in Barnstaple, and was buried as a pauper. That's another common thing that like a lot of the research shows that, like that's like probably one of the most likely scenarios where he disappeared. Maybe he got screwed out of his money. Maybe all of his pirate pals screwed him over and took all the money.
Okay.
And then he woke up one day and he was like, "Oh crap, I have no money," and he just went back to Devon and died, poor. There were a lot of sightings throughout the obviously decades and centuries after his death, or decades of his life, and then going into after his death, supposed death. There's a lot of people coming and saying that we found him. This is him. There's a fictional memoir in 1709 which claimed Avery was the king ruling a pirate utopia in Madagascar. That's another one we hear a lot, although it seems this is more of just a romantic flavoring to the pirate lore. I think it's funny that you hear about these like pirate stories and everything, and you look like where they come from, but it's like, how many of these people, again, going back to business rules, the mighty money that rules the world, everybody wants to make money.
Yeah.
And were there just like these guys that own ships and were like, hey, there's a pirate treasure. Why don't you buy my ship? And then here's this, like, I found this book, like here's this book about these pirates and all these amazing things. I'm like, oh, I have a treasure map here. I also have a ship for you and I have a crew for you. You want to pay, like those kind of things were probably happening, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Just like they happen today in many different ways.
Sure.
So there's really all these stories that we have, the popular accounts, there really are no reliable information about Henry Avery or his activities after June 1696, 1695, that era. So after he took on the Ganj-i sawai, there is no record of anything after that. That's reliable.
Incredible. Yeah.
No one knows where he went. No one knows where his treasure went. There are one other example of something that I thought was really interesting. There were in America at this time, the colonies in America, there were people that were arrested as part of his crew, tried, I guess they were never really formally charged or never charged. I think 7 was a number, that there was a record of 7 of his crew being charged in the American colonies.
Okay.
There's also been information that in the New England area of the United States, people finding coins from the empire, the Mughal Empire. Mughal Empire.
This is recently
in recent history. So that people throughout recent history, they've been finding these coins that saying like, oh, this is from that treasure. Who knows? I don't think anybody can directly relate it to that. And then how did it get here?
Yeah.
That type of thing. It could have been many different ways. Like we always hear about these, like, oh, I found this one coin on the beach. How did it get here? That type of thing. But there have been many that they've say have been found. In any case, at this point, there's no reliable evidence that Henry Avery and his treasure has actually been found, been spent, what happened to him. There's no way that anybody knows for a fact what happened. With all that being said, this story finally comes to an end of our first mystery in our show. Where, I'm going to open this up to you, Jordan. Where do you think the treasure is? What do you think happened to Avery? What do you think about what happened and where it went? What happened to him, his crew, whatever?
I think the Hollywood, you know, solution to this was that he, formed that utopia, lived out his days in like a pirate, haven. Uh, I doubt that something like that happened, especially with the granddaughter of the Mughal emperor.
Right.
It'd be really kind of like, obviously, he was a pirate, did some slave trading, and his crew possibly raped, people on the Ganj-i sawai. So not necessarily sad, but it would be kind of sad to think that he's after doing all that biggest feat in pirate history,
So
biggest,
to this day,
yeah,
known as a pirate king, the king of
so
pirates.
king of pirates, to like die in poverty, it'd be kind of a bummer.
The Hollywood bummer. I mean, it would be a pretty the ending of most people's stories is type of
Right.
The ending of like real life is, we all just die.
Yeah.
Some of us
But
have
die
less
like,
money than when we did.
yeah, but to die like penniless, like, I don't know, that's, it's definitely possible though. Like you said, he could have made some bad investments or got swindled out of his money and just died a pauper. But it'd be cool to think that he just disappeared and like lived out his days somewhere. Not necessarily like, a lavish lifestyle, but like he did have a family back home apparently, right though?
Yeah. But you came pick them up. There's no, there's no records of his. I don't believe, I didn't find in my research there was no records of his family.
I think it's definitely possible, like
that he even had a family.
Yeah. I think it's definitely might be possible that he is. he might have just like on his journey of escaping arrest and death, that possibly his ship might went under and he might have just died at sea.
Maybe it didn't survive, like the damage done to. I mean, I guess. Did they ever find the Fancy? With the Fancy, they said that everything he just appeared with his crew.
Yeah.
Was the ship ever found?
I would imagine though, like, well, would he need to like switch ships? Because like, is the ship gonna be that identifiable? He could just like, I mean, he probably has pirate flag up, but he could have easily just taken that down and put up like, English, British, Empire flag, or a French flag to like. Are people really gonna recognize his ship? But or if that's possible, he could have just ditched it and hopped on another ship.
So I just looked this up, and the Fancy, it's rumored. This is from Wikipedia. I'm gonna look at the primary source of information though. King of Pirates, 2008 by E.T. Fox. King of the Pirates: Swashbuckling Life of Henry Avery says the reference to this is that he gave his ship, the Fancy, to the governor of Nassau as a bribe. There's it also goes on to say there's supporting documentary evidence that Fancy ran aground in New Providence, and Governor Trott had guns and everything of value stripped from the ship. So it seems that there's evidence that the ship was found, or that it was out there, that people have it. It also goes into this article, this information that he returned to Britain aboard a ship called the Seaflower and disappeared. It disappeared into maybe even Ireland. So it seems that there are records of the ship, or there's at least some type of record that the ship was sold or given and then just destroyed or stripped for value.
I feel like it'd be easy as a person to disappear, but with all that wealth he had with him, like say, I think we were saying this earlier, say he had a coin from the Mughal Empire, and he tries to get rid of that or use it. There's questions going to arise from that, like, how'd you come across this?
Yeah. He needs to what do you call it? Need to clean.
You got to fence it, launder it.
Yeah, launder it.
So that could be troublesome. But if you do, like you're saying, there might have been just like fabrics on there, spices and things like that. That you could easily ditch and make a profit off of. But the money, the coins, or like bars and stuff like that might be a little bit harder to to sell off.
Yeah, I imagine the bars were
found.
stamped or labeled, especially being a sacred treasure that's so important. It had to have some type of record of it or some type of way of identifying it.
I mean, it's also possible too. Like he could have like I mean, probably not likely, but he could just have this wealth with him, not even want to sell any of it.
Spend it.
Yeah.
Well, because he's not like he's buying an iPhone every other day.
Right.
Like he's not. There's nothing out there really to buy except for food.
But like he could just look upon him like, look what I've done.
Yeah. But then where is it?
Well, that's true too. Yeah.
That's I mean, he could have just melted it all down.
Yeah.
He could have bribed someone to melt everything down, a blacksmith or something to bribe it to melt it down and relabel it. I mean, that's the other option.
Yeah.
It's not traceable when it comes to like precious metals. If it's other stuff, he could
like gemstones. He could just sell off, you know, stuff like that.
It's not like they're labeled or any way. You know? Or he can have them cut down to different sizes, you know, and then labeled, broken up. I think, you know, one of the interesting things about we see in history is the longer something goes on, the bigger the story gets, the more Hollywood will say gets it, the bigger the
more myth,
romanticization
of it,
legend, right? And you know, it's possible that he got pushed overboard. It's possible he just changed his name and moved somewhere else. If you're smart, you're going to disappear to some place in like Africa or Madagascar or something like that and just live out your life peacefully. But it's probably hard living back then. It's not like you're gonna, you know, again, if you're living in Africa or something like that, you're going to be noticed as a wealthy Englishman coming in here and building some. So it's obviously
all this money,
right? So maybe that's not the way he went. I think they just disappeared. He went somewhere. It's always it's always the most likely scenario is the one that sounds the most likely. Like I've heard detectives say that, like most likely one is the one that's the most boring and most likely actually happened. The story when it comes to crimes. But he probably went back to England in Devon, lived out his life with a bunch of money. Somehow he had to launder it. Maybe he did make bad investments by trying to get other criminals or other people to launder it for him. Yeah. And they just stole it from him.
Sure.
Like, oh yeah, we'll take these bars and melt them down for you for half the profit. And he's like, well, what else am I gonna do?
Yeah, I've no other options. Yeah.
We'll take these diamonds and we're gonna do this investment. So it sounds like the most boring is what probably happened. But again, why wouldn't he just go back out there again and do it again? Other than he has a lot of heat on him.
Yeah, I mean, and it certainly seems like he got very lucky the first time.
Right, and
you do really want to roll that dice again and be like, I got away scotch-free from this, but
who's also going to be the one that I think anybody would want to turn him in and be like, at this time, it's not like he can call the police like on the phone and say, hey, someone's trying to, guys find out who he is. They go in and say, give me your treasure. I'm going to turn you in. And rather than die, he's just going to give away his street. Go take it. Go for it.
What's he going to do?
He's hiding. It's not like he has protection, I imagine. I mean, unless maybe he is paying someone to help. But, I don't know.
Did you say they found coins from the Mughal Empire on the eastern seaboard?
There is a story about a treasure hunter or a person that has found different parts. So in Cornwall,
the detector he was using.
In Cornwall, parts of England, they found. I know they did find gold coins in New England, part of America, United States. I think there was also stories about coins being found or something being found in Cornwall or in that part of the world. It seems that like
I mean, I don't know how likely it would be that would be the coins he, stole from his Blizzard's treasure, but it could possibly mean that he might have shipwrecked.
Yeah.
And just died out at sea somewhere.
I think he was smart to just disappear. The smartest thing he had done is just stay disappeared like he did. But the world was crazy at this time, especially there's no one's. It's not like detectives are out there trying to solve a crime. They're for the most part when it comes to like this pirate disappeared and I took all his cash. Like how do they know? It's just, hey, we showed up. This boat showed up and these guys had this cash. Again, they had to probably launder it because it probably has some kind of markings that it was. Yeah. But there are stories about, and there's also records of people that were saying that were from his crew being tried in the American colonies for being part of that crew. So there are, maybe they did have some of that money that was lost. It's interesting. I think the most likely scenario, he took his treasure. Maybe he went to the Bahamas, tried to hide out some places, got kicked out, got another ship. Maybe eventually just went back to Devon and just died poor or died alone. Maybe, maybe the governor of Bahamas, wherever he was, said, "Give me all your treasure, and I won't have you killed." It really there's no way to know exactly what happened. It's not like those guys are especially governors, those people at that time that have power. They're gonna ever say what they did to him if he didn't show up.
Yeah.
And pirate code, the other pirates that get caught aren't gonna say. I'd imagine they're not gonna open their mouths. And he's never been found, so it's a mystery. Will we ever find that treasure? Think, or any way? When we look at modern treasure shipwrecks from these wooden ships, it's just a pile of. Usually, it's just a pile of stone from the ballast of the ship. So the wood all rots away, and usually it's anything that's metal is covered by barnacles or covered by the sea life
for hundreds of years.
Yeah, and so they do find, when you see like a shipwreck, they did find from the Golden Age piracy or during this time, during the colonialism and everything going on. It's usually covered with stuff, and they bring up this. You're like, oh, they found a cannon. You look at it, you're like, it looks like a bunch of sea crap. Like it doesn't. And then they clean it up, and then you're like, oh, there's a cannon under there. So if these coins are under the water, they're probably gone,
or they wash up on shore.
Yeah,
somewhere.
Or they're. How did they get there?
Buried. Yeah. Oh man, it's just weird that like he disappeared and his treasure disappeared, like both.
Yeah, it's not like they have.
Like it's not like he was caught.
And then
I'll never tell you where my treasure is.
Well, if you have his treasure, you're not gonna.
Sure. Yeah.
You never say anything. So I think in general, we all wish to find pirate treasure.
Yeah. It's like the Goonies.
Yeah. Again, going back to the living your life as the Goonies. And I think the one thing to remember is stories, legends throughout history, these kind of romanticized versions of it are really just that. They're romanticized. Most pirates did not make it rich.
No.
During the people this time. There's probably so much we don't even know about people at this time, pirates during this time. Like these, if you look at a map, it's really interesting. If you look at a map of the different pirates that were engaged or involved in piracy along the American coast during the Golden Age of piracy, there's like tons of names in the years they were active. And it's just this, I've seen it recently, on Google or something, and it was just this like pirate poster treasure map, like kind of map, and it had like these times and all. There's just tons of different like well-known pirates. It wasn't even the guys that were not very good at it, or wasn't like didn't market themselves right, or whatever you say. Yeah. It's just like there's probably tons of other ones that were just running around trying to make it big, and most of them probably died.
Yeah,
their ship got destroyed. What about the pirates that like went after a simple Dutch merchant ship and got killed? You never get hear about those guys.
No.
So there's probably a lot going on, but we hear about this one guy because this one pirate he made such a splash, and he probably encouraged all those other guys to go to piracies. This story of like unimaginable wealth getting away. We don't even know how much he made off, but estimates could be 150 guys getting away with 600 pounds, English pounds of
600,000.
600,000. Sorry, 600,000. It's a lot. Plus the 50,000 tons or pounds, 50,000 pounds, English pounds from the Fatih Muhammad added that in. So 650,000 possible English pounds of wealth at this time, which is tens of millions of dollars today.
Yeah.
Well, should we call it there?
I think that's it.
We're not going to solve this mystery sitting in my basement, but
I don't think we'll solve a lot of mysteries, but
yes,
it's still cool to talk about them.
That is the first episode done. If you're interested in anything dealing with Henry Avery, some of the resources that we used were a really awesome book, recent book, Enemy of All Mankind, True Story of Piracy, Power, and History's First Global Manhunt by Stephen Johnson. Awesome book. There's a lot of amazing articles. Christopher Minster on thoughtco.com. Some information I used from there for our research. Medium article by Karthik Nambi about the first international manhunts. And again, countless other blogs. I'll put all of our information in the show notes on our website, which we're working on, and as well as other things, logos. First episode, we're still kind of getting things together. Please go back and listen to. Please go listen to. If you're wondering why we're doing this, who we are, if we're actually worth listening to, do we have any idea what the hell we're doing? Please listen to our episode 0 episode where we talk about why we're doing the show, who we are, and what the purpose of what we hope to get out of it or hope to do with it.
Well, we hope you get out of it.
Well, we hope we just listen to it, which would be very nice. Again, my name is Chris. This is Jordan. You've been listening to Mysterious Pals, and we hope to see you soon. The next episode, which we haven't decided on yet.
No, it's a mystery.
It's a mystery. The next episode is a mystery. It's a great closing line. Thank you all, and hope to see you soon.